everybody. As everybody here already knows, with the way that everyone is working these days, device management has become a lot more, should I say, challenging. We've had a couple of events before where we've spoken about device management, and a lot of things come up around device lifecycle, user demand, security, and everything like that. So it's a really important subject that we're talking about today. I'm going to pass over to Barry Coombs, who is our CTO. He's going to take you through the webinar today, talking about all the different elements of device management with Intune. If anybody has any questions throughout the webinar, pop them in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll answer them as we go through. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Megan.
Sorry about that, everyone. I couldn't hear Barry then. Just having a look at his audio.
Hello, hopefully everyone can hear me now. Apologies about that, as ever, problems with modern technology. So thank you ever so much, Megan, for the introduction there, and thank you for everyone that's attended the webinar today. Happy to try and answer as many questions as possible. From today, I'm not going to get into the weeds of the technical detail, but talk about the principles and the areas around modern management that you should be considering, and typically what a project looks like to enable a customer that is on a modern management journey. So if you've got any questions, please put them in the Q&A, use the chat feature. I'm happy to try and make it as interactive as possible in a webinar situation. So as Megan has already introduced me, I'm Barry Coombs, CTO here at Cascade. I'm lucky enough to work with a fantastic team of technical consultants, both from a pre-sales and post-sales perspective. And as a modern a Microsoft modern management specialist here at Cascade, we help many customers. The smallest customer we've probably helped is a 30-user organization, to the biggest being a multi-thousand user FTSE 100 company, helping them get the most out of the tools that are available to them with Microsoft 365 to take their management on an evolution from legacy to where it needs to be to meet up with modern day standards. So I suppose the first question and the first point we want to dig into is, why the change now? Why is the need for changing the way that we've always been doing things, really? And some of those key reasons for change are multifaceted. So the first being around cloud migrations. If we look at the way that we are managing our tools today and where that's come from, it's from a cloud era. Actually, a lot of the tools that we use are from a pre-laptop era. They were designed with the first operating systems such as NT. So we really need to kind of think about how we're doing it and what needs to change to deliver the best management, the best security, and the best user experience with the cloud workloads that we've got. The second is about user flexibility and improved experience. I think a lot in the past, that hasn't been such a high importance. Certainly in my day, so if I go back 15, 20 years ago, I was responsible for group policy. I was hated by most people in the organization because I locked down things so tight. Whereas today, users have a bit more choice, and we need to make sure that we're delivering the best solution to make them as productive as possible. Of course, we've got to do that whilst enhancing security and ensuring that wherever the user is working, whichever devices we allow them to work on, it is always secure. And finally, to enable us to do all this, and often in IT departments, we're asked to do more with less, we've got to make sure that it's easy management. So if we compare what that looked like in the past to what that looks like today, so traditionally, there was one corporate device supplied by IT, delivered to the user, used by the user. The devices and largely the applications were in your network, running on maybe your physical or virtual infrastructure, and the laptops were connected via a LAN cable or maybe a wireless connection in more recent times. Lots of manual processes were involved with rolling out devices and supporting devices. Maybe like me, you've got the ghost USB stick that I used to have in the back in the day to deploy devices, or maybe you're using tools like SCCM to be rolling out and deploying devices inside your organization today. We would buy new devices from people like Cascade and Dell and Microsoft, get them into IT, get them set up on a desk, and then image them and get them ready for the user. And we would, as I've already said, lock down those devices as tight as possible to try and enhance security. When a user then had a problem, we would react to that problem, apply the relevant updates, patches, and get it ready for the user. This is all very legacy in the way that it's happened, but I've got to be honest, as we look into a large amount of our customers today, only a small subset of it have started to move to the modern way of working. The modern way of working is most users have more than one device. They're using the corporate laptop, maybe they've got a mobile phone, maybe they're using their own laptop, PC, tablet, iPhone as well. These are all things that now are within the realm of your responsibility, whether you own the device, whether the user chooses to use the device, and whether you allow them to, whether that's blocking it via policy or whether it's blocking it via sort of corporate policy. You must not do these things, but the technology actually still allows it to happen. Generally, we're seeing apps moving away from the data center, away from your virtual infrastructure and moving to the cloud. Things like Microsoft 365, Zero Accounting, even things like Monday.com and other applications that organizations are using. These create new challenges in the way that we keep applications up to date and secure. The expectation is we should not be doing things manually anymore. There should be automated processes to make these processes simpler and more effective. We also then look at the zero touch and self-service side of things. So we've got to be looking at the way that we are managing devices and the ways and the experiences that the users have got when those devices roll out. We all as users love that experience where we're kind of pulling the plastic off the screen. We don't want a laptop that's got someone else's leftover food jammed in the keyboard and we've got fingerprints all over the screen. We want to make sure the users are productive and secure in what they're doing and however they're working. And we want to be supporting them proactively. Before the problems occur, we want to make sure they're being fixed and remedied. So there's a large amount for us to consider in that traditional to the modern management way that we're working. And one of the main principles that I often hear people about is we want to adopt zero trust. We want to be in a place where we are adopting a zero trust methodology inside our businesses. Now, what does this mean will really depend on your organization. But as a standard, it's effectively we don't trust anything. We haven't got a LAN anymore that almost allows a point of trust. We don't trust specific users because they're a user inside the organization and not a guest. We kind of isolate things into their own bubbles. They're only allowed to do what they need to do at any given time. We look at access control, we look at the network, we look at how we're segmenting things and how we're encrypting things across the network. So we need to take these principles into consideration. Be interested in the chat to hear if any of this is resonating with you, and certainly where you are on maybe a zero trust journey beyond the devices in your data center and things like that. So the 5 components of the modern endpoint experience, according to Microsoft, evolve around the following areas. The first being around the devices, the second being around the operating system, the third is around how we're securing this, the endpoint security, pivotal to that zero trust. We then have the management on a day-to-day proactively. How are we managing these devices, maintaining them and supporting them all the way from cradle to grave, from the point where it rolls out to the point where it is going to be retired. And finally, the AI-powered productivity apps. We know Microsoft loves AI. Copilot is probably one of the fastest growing use cases that we've seen in recent years. We are looking at all of these components to deliver that modern experience to our users that is secure, but is easy for you to manage. So the real question and the real reason that you're here today is how does Microsoft help with this? And maybe how Cascade can help you get to the point of from where you are today to where you're going moving forward. It would be interesting in the chat to maybe hear from some of you as to where you are on the modern management journey. Have you started dabbling with Intune? Have you got devices registered? Just so I get a little bit of insight as to where people are on the journey. So let's have a look at each of those areas and go through them to see how Microsoft and Cascade can help you. So the first thing is all around the devices. What is important around the devices is to not just necessarily have one single standard, but get the right devices for the right users at any given time. Microsoft obviously have a wonderful selection of Surface devices now, from the Surface Book to the Surface Go, the Surface Laptop, to suit a number of different use cases. But of course, we've been a long-term partner with the likes of Dell and HP. So the right device for the right user is now easier to achieve. But make sure you're also thinking around more than just that primary device. What other devices they're using? Are they using their own device? And is that creating you a security issue? And what are the different ways that you could be resolving that? So the next section is around that operating system. Obviously, speaking to Microsoft, Windows 11 Enterprise is the way to go. It has a number of features built into it to allow you to manage it from a variety of different scenarios. But we know it is no longer going to be the only operating system in place inside your organization. So we'll talk about how Intune can help you manage those operating systems far and beyond Windows 11 Enterprise. Next, we're kind of getting onto the security side of things. If anybody is using Microsoft 365 today, you'll be aware of Entra ID, used to be called Azure Active Directory. This is core to our security. Features like conditional access, which we'll talk about in a moment, are pivotal to the way that you're securing things inside your organization. We then have the Defender portfolio, from Defender to Endpoint, Defender for Microsoft 365, Defender for Cloud, that is over to offer a layer of security. We also have the third-party equivalents like Bitdefender that Cascade also partners with, offering a variety of services, but maybe also a little bit more of that external support to help you ensure you're always on top of your security, aware of your vulnerabilities, and there to support you should the worst happen. And finally, very much to that zero trust. Our security used to be around providing security around your LAN, about having the right firewall and the antivirus in place. Today, protection is about a lot deeper than that. We need to make sure that we're encrypting our documents, that we're providing security at the root of where the personal data and the confidential data will be. Microsoft Purview is the standard that we expect organizations to have today. It allows you to flag your different emails, documents, Teams channels, SharePoint sites to ensure that they are encrypted to the layer of security that is required depending on the data. And this is one of the biggest areas that we're helping people with at the moment around their data strategy, moving their data into Microsoft 365 and ensuring that it is protected with Purview. So if this is something you're looking at and aware of, then please reach out and we can help you with that. We then go on to Microsoft Intune, the main subject of today, and where we're going to start breaking down some of those core features. And it plays right alongside Windows Auto Patch, which is a feature that allows you to make sure that the core components of your Microsoft environment, such as the operating system and Microsoft applications, are fully patched and maintained, with the ability to have rings so you're able to maybe roll out the patches first to IT or test laptops before the rest of the environment. I've got to be honest, though, this is one of the areas that's probably a little bit lacking, and this is where we do rely on third-party services to deliver patching across a whole suite of enterprise applications, but we can dig into that a little bit more. And then finally, we've got Microsoft 365 with Copilot and Teams, the core of what is going on inside your data center. We've already spoken about Copilot. We've already looked into a lot of the other areas. Some of the things that we are seeing is the things like Microsoft calling, Microsoft Teams calling, Microsoft Teams phone is an area that organizations are looking to adopt more. So let's look into some of the areas that are included with Intune and what that journey looks like to maybe take you from where you are today to a more mature Intune setup. So the first principle is we must be able to manage endpoints anywhere. We must be able to simplify the management into one single area across all the devices. We must be able to look across devices that are owned by the organization and owned by the users. We must be able to support the phones, the tablets, and the PCs. And we've got to be able to deliver that endpoint experience, the better endpoint experience, I suppose. And this is exactly what we're going to help you achieve with Intune and the various different components. The first thing to bear in mind and consider is that when it comes to support, Intune isn't just about those Windows devices. It will help you support Apple devices, and that includes iOS 15 and later, Mac OS 11 and later. From a Google perspective, you've got Android 8 and later. And of course, we've got Windows 10 and later from all those other areas. There is even support for Ubuntu desktop. So if you are a house that has developers in-house, as long as they are using Ubuntu desktop 20.04 or later, there is even some support for being able to offer the right levels of protection. Now, if you are an organization that is using different desktop operating systems other than Windows, have a chat with the specialists at Cascade. We can advise what is the right strategy for you. Whilst Intune will help you manage all of these different areas, it depends on what level of support you want to be able to manage those devices. For example, if you have a large amount of Macs inside your estate, it may be worth looking at a product by a company called Jamf. We can actually implement that in a way alongside Intune, where they work in harmony together and not as separate systems to offer the best management experience across both your Windows 11 or Windows 10 devices and your Mac OS devices. The next thing you need to consider is how you are licensed for Intune to be able to get the management experience that you want. There are a variety of different ways. The important thing to note is if you're on business standard or if you are on Office 365, you're unlikely to have the relevant licenses that you need to be able to leverage the tools inside of the suite. So you can ensure that your licensing is aligned to the right tools that you're going to need for this journey by looking at some of the different SKUs on screen here. I'm not going to go through each one individually, but reach out to the specialists at Cascade. We can help you align where you are today with where you need to be in the future. What we see most organizations doing is if you're a smaller organization, you might be on business standard today. You'll be likely moving up to business premium from that perspective to get what you need. If you are on Office 365 E3 or Office 365 A3, if you're an educational establishment, you'll be looking to move to the equivalent Microsoft 365 E3 or E5 SKUs, depending on what it is you're looking to achieve with Intune. And specifically, lots of the security features and things like that will depend which one is the right one for you in your organization. As ever, Microsoft like changing the name on everything on us on a regular basis just to make sure that we're on our toes. So I've just popped that on screen now to remind you what some of the terminology used to be called. So if you've looked at Intune in the past and now you're considering where it's going, the names have changed as followed. Azure ID is now Microsoft Entra. The AD Connect that a lot of you have is now Entra Connect, and the Azure AD tenant is now a Microsoft Entra tenant. So I think it was quite easy to remember previously because we've gone from Active Directory to Azure AD, but it's now all about being Entra from that perspective. So let's dig into some of the core components of Intune and talk about how you will consider them, what are the configuration options and what you're going to be achieving with them. So the first one is the devices. I think we've spoken about that a lot and what is supported. So we'll move on to the next one. The next one in here is around Entra ID. Now, it's important that you're considering how you are leveraging Entra ID today, how you are replicating your account from on-premises AD, if you still have it, into Entra ID. You want to make sure you have the ability for write back to be enabled, for things like password reset to be available to your users. And we also need to consider some of the features in there, such as conditional access that we'll come to in a little bit later. We have the Intune configuration profiles, and we also have the Intune compliance policies. These work hand in hand. So one of the elements that we will recommend for you is a discovery. I'd imagine most of you are using group policy. Maybe some of you are also using SCCM to control some of the elements inside your infrastructure, as well as maybe third-party tools, things like Res and other tools that have been available for a long time. What we recommend that you do is do an analysis, do a discovery of what policies, what GPOs are in place today. Why have you got them? Are they still needed? And what is the strategy moving forward? Now, the Intune configuration profiles are the place where you're going to be configuring the modern version of the GPOs. This is where you're able to set what is locked down. What is the experience for the users? Make sure that the apps, the finesse is there when the user logs into the desktop for the first time, that they're not having to configure things that become frustrating for them or give them problems. Now, once you've got those configured, and I'll recommend a journey of how you kind of start that and then improve on it in the process in a moment, you then move on to your Intune compliance policies. Now, for every configuration profile, you probably, want to have a matching compliance policy. This is the test to see if it is actually working and actually deployed on each of your users' devices. Now, this was a big problem in group policy. It was kind of a spray and pray approach. You chucked things out there and you assumed that it was working with group policy. The real difference with Intune and how we can be proactive with this is we know if it's there. We know if the device is compliant to the configuration profile. So getting these right and ensuring that they're hand in hand is really important. One challenge that we see with a lot of organizations is they implement Intune compliance policies when no matching configuration profile is there. So that device is never going to be compliant because you've not been able to implement the right settings to lock down, secure, or configure that device in the right way. The next one is conditional access. So once you've got your configuration profiles and your Intune compliance policies in place, you can consider, do you want to then lock down access to certain things inside of your environment if a device isn't compliant? So if a device isn't compliant, maybe it's not got the latest security updates, maybe it's 2 iterations behind. Are you going to give it a warning, or are you going to stop them accessing certain data or certain areas inside your infrastructure? This can also be used for things like personally owned devices to make sure they meet a minimum requirement to be allowed some level of access to your data. And BYOD is one of the biggest challenges. We see very few people that have the right strategy in place, allowing the flexibility for bring your own device. And bring your own device tends to be mobile phones, tablets, even a home personal computer. And too many people actually have it open, so it is a risk to their business. So conditional access configured in association with Intune is a really important aspect. The next one are the applications and the application policies, allowing you to not only distribute the applications, but configure them and lock them down in certain scenarios. Don't forget that when you are able to configure bring your own device policies in Intune, sometimes you're not managing the complete device. You're just managing the applications itself. So this is about what is available on an application by application basis with the app policies that are available to them. And this is, again, an area that we don't see many people very mature in. It's only those customers that we've helped along the journey that are getting to the point where they're ticking off all the boxes in all of these different areas. And finally, if you think you're there with all of these areas, you can really leverage Windows Autopilot, which I'll go into a little bit more detail in a moment. But this is the dream of simplification, a better user experience, and bringing together all of these different areas. We do see a lot of people that are using Autopilot haven't gone the full fold through this process, and actually there's still quite a lot of manual processes involved in deploying devices or supporting them when they're out in the field. There's a number of different aspects to consider here. Where you are on your journey with those will change depending on where you want to get to and what you want to achieve with your modern management strategy. When it comes to those applications, we are going to look to support them throughout their complete life cycle. From the moment where we add it, and there's different types of applications that we can manage with Intune, from the kind of MSI packages to websites being added as links to the laptop, to line of business applications, those applications that maybe you create yourselves. Also, the Windows Store applications are now able to be managed in a lot more mature way than they ever have been before. So we're able to create the relevant policies, and we recommend during a discovery phase that you look at what are the personas inside your business. So you might go that there's a marketing, there's sales, and there's central services. We're going to create 3 different personas, and the desktop needs to look and be transformed differently based upon those personas. The applications that people are going to get will be different based upon those different areas. The way that we manage, maintain, or support them might change as well. And we can make sure that we're configuring policies in the relevant ways to be able to go and do that. We look at the way that we configure the applications. I mentioned that finesse. So Ollie Restorix talks very much around how do we finesse the desktop to deliver the best experience to the user. The corporate backgrounds that you might want to put on there. The fact that the user doesn't have to type their details into Word and Outlook when they're going in there for the first time. That the dictionary is set to United Kingdom. Whatever that finesse is needed, there are elements that we can do that inside of Intune. How we're protecting the data, and then when it comes to it, how do we make sure that the device and even the personal accounts are retired when it comes to that? So there's a number of different areas there that we've got to consider when it comes to the application side of things. I want to just go back and touch upon some of the areas in here that you might want to be considering. And a number of these will be around those personas based upon what you're going to achieve with each of them and the journey that you're going to go on. So let's look at that journey, and then I will click on a few of the extra sides. So where you're on this journey will depend on where you're starting today and what you want to achieve. But as we go along it, let's look at the different areas. So your first area is, how are you going to register the devices inside Microsoft Intune? Now, depending on where your applications are configured and how your user needs to be able to work, you will have the option for hybrid join, where the device is connected to both Active Directory on premises, allowing you to leverage things like GPO and some of the on-premises technologies more, or whether you're natively joining it to Entra ID, which is a way that we're seeing increasingly organizations are able to go as they're retiring legacy technologies. We will help advise you on which one is right for you. If you are hybrid joining, the VPN technology that you're going to use will be really important, because we need to make sure that the users, wherever they are able to also get to that Active Directory for any elements that is required. Now, typically, once you've figured out how to register those devices, we will help you and support you put a basic set of configuration and compliance policies together. Things like ensuring that BitLocker encryption, which is a minimum standard today for any device, whether it's a PC or a laptop, or the relevant encryption on any of those other operating systems, is in place, as well as maybe applying basic policies like desktop backgrounds and other lockdowns that are kind of that minimal hygiene that you will want to make sure that is in place. Next up could be the conditional access policies to make sure those things are being met, and to make sure that any aren't, or at least being flagged, being warned, or maybe being blocked if they are grossly out of date or missing areas. Maybe they're jailbroken or things like that. We can then get onto the areas of advanced configuration and compliance policies. Now, this is a real great area that you can really dig into exactly the experience and the protection that is needed on your devices. But this is an area where we find people kind of fall short. Maybe they've sorted the registration, maybe they've put a set of basic policies on there, but how do we know what to be configuring next? There are a huge amount of different profiles and policies available to you to configure, and there are a number of different ways. It can become confusing, but it isn't just about configuring it once, it's keeping up with the recommended standards. There are standards out there such as CIS that kind of give you an idea of the different security policies that you might want to implement inside of Intune to lock down and manage the devices. Now, this is an area that we specialize. We are doing these modern management projects day in, day out. We work to know your organization, what you need to achieve, what certifications you might have, what compliance you need, and are able to help you, advise you on what meets those standards. We're able to leverage things like the CIS standards and help tune that to your organization's needs to get that mix right between flexibility and security. So that's an area that you're going to look to mature over time. We also have a new service coming out shortly where we will regularly work with you, review what's in place, and help you ensure that you're constantly meeting the standards that you need to be able to meet. Reach out if we can help you with that at all. The next one is getting those initial few applications. The really easy ones are the Microsoft applications deployed to the devices as standard, before they're moving on to the advanced deployments such as third-party applications, store applications, or maybe those line of business applications. Once you've then got this all in place, we can then leverage Windows Autopilot, which I'm going to talk about at the moment. And somewhere in this mix, and it will depend on your priority, we'll look at how those bring your own device, the personally owned devices, can be supported. In this day and age, we really shouldn't be going, no, you cannot use any personally owned devices. It creates a burden for the business and users. If they've got an iPad sat there that they really want to use, we should be enabling them to use it in the most secure way. But we've got to get the policies right where they are able to manage it. They've got the confidence that they can use their device without IT wiping their personal photos or things like that. And getting that mix right can be a little bit tricky. So typically what this journey looks like is what is on screen. Your journey will be personal to you. But what I would say is lots of people look at this as one single project, and that could be a big project to implement from end to end. So what we recommend we do is we break this up to the bite-sized chunks that are on the screen, maybe taking one or two of these coins together at a time to personalize what the project would look like for you. Now, I've mentioned autopilot a few times now, so let's just talk about what that is for those of you that might not know. So first of all, autopilot, we're configuring the areas that we've mentioned to be able to customize the device when it is new or when it needs work doing on it. And that is done by the IT admin into Intune. Now that profile is synchronized using Entra between Intune and Windows Autopilot. You can then buy devices through Cascade from the likes of Microsoft or Dell, where they will be pre-registered into your Intune environment, ready for deployment. They're then able to be shipped directly from the vendor to the employee. There are options as well. If you do have some manual steps where you can do that with kind of a white glove experience, where you're kind of still providing that kind of out of the box, pull the screen protector off experience, but it does give you the options to do those manual steps. But I highly advise any organization in this day and age to be getting to a point where you can ship a device directly to the user. They can log in and it auto configures in front of the user. In this day and age, you don't buy a new iPhone and then go to Carphone Warehouse for them to set it up for you. That is the equivalent to what you are doing with your devices if you're not using autopilot to its full extent today. There can be challenges depending on your applications, but we've done this multiple times where that experience is able to be delivered to the users. So the user does it and that self-deployment then exists from that perspective. So as you're starting this journey, a few points just to reiterate. Are you going to do hybrid join or are you going to do Entra ID joined? It will depend on what you need to be able to roll out and what your configuration is today. We can help you with that as well as the VPN technologies. You might be using things like the always on VPN, or you might already have technologies you want to integrate into the mix. What are the devices you're going to be joining? Depending on what you're looking to do and how you're looking to achieve this will depend on actually if the device needs to be wiped or can just be joined and how you're going to achieve that. So you've got a number of different options. Undoubtedly, the easiest way is with new devices happening, you then bring them onto the new way of working, but very much you can do the rest of the devices without wiping them with minimal fuss. Again, that's something we can help you with. And then what licensing have you got in place today to make sure that you've got the right licensing to support this journey? The journey is today more than just those productivity apps. It's about the AI, it's about the management, and it's about the security. So if you're on Business Standard or Office 365, time to look at those upgrades to Business Premium or Microsoft 365. So I've gone through quite a lot of information here, but what is the next step? What is the next logical place that we look to go for? So we offer a modern management workshop. This is a free workshop. I'm not trying to sell you something, where we will come and speak to you where you are on this journey, what are you looking to achieve, and how we're going to break down a project for you. This will be with one of my technical specialists that is specialized in Intune, that has worked with tens of our customers on these projects to help them with their modern management experience. For the best way of doing that, you can reach out via the QR code on screen. And we actually have an offer available at the moment that if you book one of these sessions, we're going to put you in a draw to win the marvelous Uni pizza oven. I don't know if anyone here currently has one today, but they create the best pizza. So hopefully that's a little incentive to get those workshops booked, so you can enjoy the benefits of modern management inside your environment as well. So I've gone through a lot of information there. Depending on where you are on the journey, that probably feels like a lot, or if you're already down the road, maybe you want more technical detail. That's what the workshop is designed for. That's what I'd recommend. So click the link, it's in the chat. I hope you have found this useful. If there's anything else that you'd like to discuss, please reach out. But thank you for joining us today. We look forward to working with you soon.